Lesson 11 has several parts. In this lesson we'll be talking about reciprocal and multiplicative inverse. We'll be talking about order of operations, and then we'll be learning how to identify multiplication and addition in a problem. So in part A, those two words, reciprocal and multiplicative inverse, they both mean the same thing. And all it is, for example, if you had 1/5, the reciprocal or multiplicative inverse of 1/5 is 5/1. So reciprocal and multiplicative inverse are when you're working with fractions and you just flip the numerator and denominator. So -2/7, the reciprocal or multiplicative inverse is 7/2. And if you had like a whole number, like 3, you could always think of that as a fraction, right? 3/1, so its reciprocal is 1/3. And it's interesting that if you multiply a whole number by its reciprocal, 3 times 1/3, that equals 1. So the fact that you multiply a number by its reciprocal and that product equals 1, that's going to be an important thing to remember for later lessons. They're just introducing the concept of a reciprocal now, just so you can kind of get familiar with it, and we'll be using that in lessons later on. Part B is on order of operations, and let's just learn about this by doing some practice problems. Look at practice problem A. 2 times 3 plus 4. Now you might think there you could do 2 times 3 plus 4, or 2 times 3 and then add the 4 on there. So which way is right? Do you do the multiplication of 2 times 3 and then add 4? Or do you do 3 plus 4 and then multiply that by 2? Well, the thing to remember here is you always do multiplication first. That's just a rule in working with operations. Sometimes, somewhere down the line, somebody defined a problem like that to have multiplication done first, then the addition part. For example, if people in America did multiplication first, then addition, and people in China did addition first, then multiplication, both groups would get different answers for the same problem. Therefore, that's just a universally accepted rule in mathematics. In a problem like that, you do the multiplication first, then the addition. So what we could do to help us remember that is put the multiplication part in parentheses. 2 times 3 and then plus 4. And these problems, I like to work those vertically like other ones I've done to just keep up with the different steps and the signs. And so 2 times 3 is 6. Then I'll put plus 4 there. And then do that addition. That equals 10. Look at practice problem B. Let's do that problem. And again, we do multiplication first always, and then addition. So let's identify our multiplication. And this might be something you want to do, is use a different colored pen or pencil and identify the multiplication with parentheses. So those are our two spots with multiplication, and so let's do those first. 6, we'll rewrite the problem below. 6 plus 2 times 3 is 6, minus 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, and then we can add in pairs here. 6 plus 6 is 12. And then we could just say plus a negative 8, since we're thinking algebraic addition here. 12 plus a negative 8 is 4. Now part C is on identifying multiplication and addition, and it's a continuation of part B, and these problems will just be a little more complex than the ones we did in part B. So look at this problem here that we could simplify by doing some multiplication and addition, and some questions might arise in this problem as to where am I going to be doing multiplication and where am I going to be doing addition. Well, the thing to remember here, if there is no plus or minus sign between a symbol or pair of symbols or a number and a symbol, then multiplication is indicated. For example, let's just go left to right here and see the 3 and the negative 2. That's not saying to add those, it's saying to multiply, because there's no plus or minus sign in between the 3 and that parenthesis on the left. So that is indicating multiplication. Likewise, in the next part, between that 5 and the parentheses there is no plus or minus sign, so that's indicating you're going to take 5 times negative 5. You're multiplying. And then in the last part, there is no plus or minus sign in between those two parentheses, the parentheses around the 4 and around the negative 7. So there's another multiplication that's indicated. Well, let's just go ahead and simplify this problem, and we'll make this our third practice problem. And one thing you can do on these problems, like we learned in lesson 7, is to group the different parts. So what we could do is make some groups here, and we could group all of that, all of this, and all of this together, and put plus signs in between them. That's one way to do these problems to help you stay organized and figure out what goes where. And so what we could do is have the 6, and I should have put a blue plus sign up there, but that should go there, and then do that operation on the inside. There's multiplication there. 3 times negative 2 is a negative 6. And so we'll say plus a negative 6, and then negative 5 times negative 5 would be positive 25, so we'll say plus 25. And then 4 times negative 7, that would be a negative 28, and so we'll have plus a negative 28. Now let's just go back and simplify by adding in pairs. 6 plus a negative 6 is 0, and then plus 25 and a negative 28 would be a negative 3. 0 plus negative 3 is just negative 3, and so that's the answer there. Now, I'm hoping that by now you don't need to make those big groupings like that, and that you can just work the problem left to right, doing your multiplication first, then your addition. So let's do one more problem, and on this one we won't do the groupings. Let's just look at it, read it left to right, do our multiplication first, then our addition. And so we have 11, which isn't multiplied, and then we have a minus 2 times a negative 9. So let's keep the minus out there and do 2 times negative 9 is negative 18. And then minus 4 times 3, so that would be negative 12. And we knew that we had to do multiplication on those because, for example, in the 2 and the negative 9, there was no plus or minus sign in between the 2 and that parentheses. And then on the 4 and the 3, there's no plus or minus sign in between the 4 and the parentheses. So we knew that those were multiplication. So let's continue here. We'll have 11 plus 18 because we have the opposite of 18 there, or minus times minus. And then we have a negative 12. Now let's do the addition here. Add in pairs. 11 plus 18 would be 29, plus a negative 12. That would give us 17 for an answer. So when you're simplifying expressions that contain multiplication and algebraic addition, work them left to right. Do them like I'm doing here, where you work them vertically, and that helps you keep your plus and minus signs organized. And remember that if there is no plus or minus sign between a symbol, like a parenthesis symbol, and a number, or between two symbols, then that means multiplication is indicated. Okay, well that's all for lesson 11.